stock is that it fires multiple shots automatically by automating the movement of the trigger. So my friend says the trigger moves back and forth every time a shot is fired. Our view is that those subsequent movements of the trigger aren't functions of the trigger because they're not responding to separate acts, separate pulls, or anything else by the shooter. They're just the result of.
So what is happening with the trigger when someone doesn't need a bump stock to bump fire a weapon?
So this is the unassisted manual bump firing that's described, where an expert can take a regular semi-automatic rifle and hold it loosely enough that they can do something like bump firing. I think in our view there too, there's just one function of the trigger because the first push starts the sequence and then the sequence continues. The ATF explained, and we agree, that that's not automatic because there's no self-regulating mechanism. The user has to.
So what's the difference? The same thing is happening with the trigger.
The same thing is happening with the trigger, and I think that's why we would say with manual bump firing, there is just a single function of the trigger. There's one action that initiates the firing sequence. We think it's not automatic because there's no self-regulating mechanism. The user is having to do all of the work that the bump stock automates for you on a rifle fitted with a bump stock.
Supreme Court is hearing arguments concerning the bump stock ban, but it has greater implications. Welcome to another installment of the Connecticut Gun Bench. Today's video is brought to you by P.A.N. Firearms, LLC. P.A.N. Firearms, your NRA certification and multifaceted gun training. You can reach us at 203-300-6343 or use our website at www.panfirearmsllc.com. As always, there'll be a link in the description box below. And if you like channel, like content, and what I do here, you can support me with the link. Everything is appreciated. And once again, for my Connecticut residents, if you plan on getting your Connecticut pistol permit, please get that training done before July 2024. After that, it gets longer, harder, and more expensive. If you have your permit, watch the expiration date. Do not rely on the state to send out the renewal notice. There is a link to the online renewal portal in the description box. Keep an eye on that. Let's talk about this. Now, today, Wednesday, let me get the date right, February 28th. The Supreme Court is hearing arguments on the bump stock ban, and the case specifically is Cargill versus Garland. Now, if you remember, former President Trump put a bump stock ban in place specifically due to what happened in Las Vegas, which, in my opinion, and it is in my opinion, has a lot more questions that have never been answered. But we do have a bump stock ban, and of course, there was a lawsuit against it, Cargill versus Garland. And now the Supreme Court is hearing arguments on it. Now, I want to be very clear on what they're hearing here. This is the question that has been presented to the court. And I will be very, very clear. Question presented. Since 1986, Congress has prohibited the transfer or possession of any new machine gun. 18 U.S.C. 922. The National Firearms Act 26 U.S.C. 5801 defines a machine gun as any weapon which shoots, is designed to shoot, or can be readily restored to shoot automatically more than one shot without manually reloading by a single function of the trigger. 26 U.S.C. 5845B. The statutory definition also encompasses any part designed or intended solely and exclusively, or a combination of parts designed and intended for use in converting a weapon into a machine gun. A bump stock is a device designed and intended to permit users to convert a semi-automatic rifle so that the rifle can be fired continuously with a single pull of the trigger, discharging potentially hundreds of rounds per minute. In 2018, after a mass shooting in Las Vegas carried out using bump stocks, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives published an interpretive rule concluding that bump stocks are machine guns as defined in Section 5845B. In the decision below, the en banc Fifth Circuit held that the ATF rule was unlawful because the statutory definition of machine gun does not encompass bump stocks. The question presented is as follows. Whether a bump stock device is a machine gun as defined in 26 U.S.C. 5845B because it is designed and intended for use in converting a rifle into a machine gun, i.e. into a weapon that fires automatically more than one shot by a single function of the trigger. So that's what they're talking about there at the High Court. Now, a bump stock is not a machine gun because let's look at what an actual machine gun is. A machine gun once you pull that trigger and hold it down, will continuously fire until the magazine is depleted. A bump stock requires that the user hold the item in a specific manner that allows for a cyclic action of the rifle going back and forth, which creates the illusion of automatic fire. Once the shooter disengages that action from their shoulder, the item will stop firing, whereas a machine gun will continue to fire. Now, I've listened to a little bit of what's going on up there at the High Court, and there seems to be a lot of vitriol against Comey Barrett. I'm not sure why. She's asking questions, and it's no indication of what she's going to do one way or the other. But as I said, there are greater implications with this. This ruling is going to set the tone for everything else coming up. Because remember, the ATF put this in place with a rule, as you heard in the argument here, interpretive rule. They did not go through Congress to create a law. That is the biggest thing that I personally find with this. Because every other rule, the bump stock ban rule, the frame and receiver rule, are all going to fall under this decision. So if the Supreme Court says, yeah, bump stock is not really a machine gun, every other rule coming up is going to be overturned based on that. And that's really, in my opinion, more important than whether or not somebody can own a bump stock or not. Me personally, I wouldn't own a bump stock. I don't care about it one way or the other, but I do have a problem with the ATF just casually making rules on the fly to ban items or to reinterpret what the item does to then ban it. Because if the Supreme Court, let's just go down devil's advocate, says, yeah, the bump stock is a machine gun, then the ATF is now being given a carte blanche, well, a blank check per se, to basically go around saying, well, we're going to incorporate other items under a rule to then prevent you from owning it or using it. And that could be anything, literally. So that's where my focus is right now. Like I said, I listened to a lot of the arguments going back and forth, and I don't see anything that will say, yeah, this is go one way or the other. I don't know. I don't know what the court will do. But we can only hope that the court will rule in favor of this fact that the bump stock is not a machine gun, but more so that the ATF cannot just make arbitrary rules and redefine established law to include other items that they personally don't like or the powers that be don't like, to then say, we're going to ban it under this rule by reinterpreting the rule to make sure this item fits into that rule, like they did with the arm brace. If you remember, for decades, they said that the arm brace really was of no consequence. And then all of a sudden they said, no, it's a problem. It makes a short barrel rifle. And of course, all the issues that came from that, with their demanding that you register them under the NFA. So we have to watch this very carefully, because once again, it's going to show and set a tone for everything else coming up. It's not just the ATF making rules. It's also assault weapons bans that are coming up, magazine bans that are coming up, red flag laws. This is going to give us an indication of how the court will rule in those other situations. So once again, I probably will not talk about this again until the court actually makes a decision, because, I don't need to spend days nitpicking over every little question and every little argument going back and forth at the court. We need to hear what the court's going to do, because in my opinion, that is going to set precedent for everything else that's going to come up the line to go before the court when it comes to firearms and the Second Amendment. So I'm watching this very carefully. I'm listening to the arguments. Now, if you want to hear exactly what is being said at the court, it is actually online. You can actually, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, Jared at Guns and Gadgets actually has a live feed where he is, everything that's being said at the court is basically being recorded. So you can go to his page and listen to everything that's said. At this point, I don't see a reason to do that, because I'm more interested in what the court is actually going to do. So this is important news. This is, once again, to me is a milestone step, because as I said before, it's going to set the tone for everything else that's coming up the line to the high court and how they will rule on it. So let me know what you think. As always, you can leave your comments in the comment section below. And as always, any statements of violence or statements that lead to violence will be removed. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're notified the next time a video goes live. I will see you on the next one. Peace.